Importance, 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 importance. The importance of names. Names. Why? Why are names important? Why? Why are they? Why are names important? Why? Why? What do animals care for names? Well, I'll tell you. Names aren't important. Right? What does a dog care about a name? Animals who have no use for language, who have no language system, they don't care about names. And they get along just fine, they get about just fine. So why can't we go on with our business without caring for names? For names and the names of things. Why must we care about names? Why? 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 Do I want to answer this? I don't know, because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, how about we care for names because we can speak. Well, maybe you could say other animals can speak too. It's just that we don't understand their language. But clearly there's a language barrier between humans and lesser animals. Right? I mean, dogs, it's not even that other animals don't have a language of their own. That's not even it. Right? That's not even it. It's more like our language is more sophisticated to the degree that to the degree that at least we care to name things, to have the names for things, right? Which makes sense. And this makes sense because considering how sophisticated the human language is or can be, you could ask, why are names so important? Why don't we act like lesser animals? Or why don't we let things be as like lesser animals? I think it's partly because we can't afford to. Because we recognize that we are beyond, the cats and dogs. Well, not so much. It's very easy for a person to derive back into a cat or a dog, or a beast of the wild. It's very easy. You only really need to deprive a person to really see to really see the animal that they can become, or how well homely that would fit in the wild, right? That's a matter of deprivation. But it seems to me. So, is it possible to not have a name as a human being, right? Since we care so much about naming things, I think. Oh, yes. I think this is part of what distinguishes us from lesser animals. Part of what makes us distinctly human is that we have the ability to name things, right? We have the ability to give names to things, and that is quite special, isn't it? Right? No other animal can do that. We have the ability to grant authority, or to grant power. And maybe then you could say, what a leap. Where is the power in a name, right? Like how do you correlate? How do you go from names to power? Right? How do you go from names to power? And maybe let me hold on to that thought for now. Let me hold on to that thought for now. Let's go back and ask, why is it possible to not have a name? Right? Is it possible to not have a name? Well, yes, I imagine it's possible to not have a name, or it's possible to not care for a name. Huh. Well, okay, maybe I don't think it's possible to not have a name. I think it's more so possible to not care for a name, and you're not going to care for a name if you're a base human. If you say you grew up in the wild, like an animal, right? Like a wild animal, or you were abused as a child to the extent that you never had a development for language. Say maybe like you were neglected by your parents. I just remembered this experiment. It wasn't much of an experiment. It was something like, child abuse, where like it's not an experiment. I wouldn't say it's an experiment, but it's something like, well, it was a case. Yes, it was a case study where I forgot the child's name. Was it Jeannie or something like that? The psychologists named her something something archetypal, something like Jeannie. So yeah, like there's this child that was she was locked in the basement of her parents' home, strapped to a porta potty, and kept alone in the dark for several years. Since she was pretty young, all the way up until she was like maybe like 13, 15, all up until the time she was an adolescent. And all her time she lived in that darkness, strapped on that porta potty, dirty. And they just never let her out of there. They never talked to her. Man, imagine, fuck me, bro. Imagine that shit. Fuck. Man, just imagine that. And she just didn't know. It's like she lived in those four, in that four corner wall, that segment of darkness for something like a whole decade of her life, or a decade plus. And she never really developed a language system. It was all messed up. And she was also, because she lived in the dark all her life, she turned out to have a very bad eyesight, or like she couldn't. I don't want to have to search these things up. I'm just going off of what I remember. But like, she had a problem with her eyesight where she couldn't see very far. Right, because like she lived in the darkness all her life, so like she had a very she was short-sighted. Right, she had her vision got fucked up. Her language got fucked up too, so she couldn't speak properly. Even like several years later, like she had an issue with language. She had a lot of issues. Yeah, and like she didn't really know, like to her, that was her entire world. Like that was the world that to her, that was the world as she knew it. So it's not even like she was. Can you really be depressed over an oppression, which when you really, you don't really have a concept of oppression? It's like, yeah, I'm sure it was all very miserable, but like misery was her entire life. So I don't reckon she had all that many complaints, right? It's like she was conditioned to live in that way. So yeah, she basically lived as a caged animal. It's like, So for a person like that, right, it's a quite a terrible example. Quite a terrible example. But that's what I thought back to. To a person like that, names would not matter. The names of things would not matter. And so it's I would imagine it's more accurate to say that one may not care for a name, but it's not, for as long as you have a concept, you have like a language system, for as long as you have language to communicate from one person to another, it's impossible to not name things. It's impossible to not put a name to things. And so why is it that where does power come from names? What power is derived within names? Well, in the process of naming things, like, where is the power derived? Well, for instance, if you name something, it's like, if you put a name to something, it becomes more stable, right? It becomes more defined. Say, a name may strengthen or reduce not an idea. Sure. Like, names may strengthen or reduce an idea or physical form, right? Say, like, for instance, there's something creeping about in the dark, right? And the person, say, like the caveman, is particularly scared of that thing creeping about in the dark. So they conjure up some word and they give it a name, and now it has a name. It depends on how the caveman actually sees that thing creeping around in the dark. If it's a particularly brave caveman, they may think, why who is that fellow creeping around in the dark there? Are they scared to approach me, right? And, maybe they'll give it a name, something like puny shadow, right? It's like, I know what is small, and this thing's creeping around in the dark like a shadow. That's a puny shadow. I don't gotta worry about that guy. I don't know why he's creeping around out there. If he comes any closer, he's probably gonna meet his end, right? I'm gonna hack him up. I'm probably gonna have him for dinner, right? But like a thing that's creeping around in the shadow, you're less inclined to think it's some puny shadow. And if it is a puny shadow, right, all the more reason to be scared of it, because we fear what we don't see. And what better way to sort of explain, or to sort of contain the unexplained? What better way is there than first to identify it with a name? It's like, what is that thing creeping around in the dark? It's probably a monster. Whatever the word monster means. The word monster may mean nothing, right? But say you give it a name, and over time, people see enough monsters, right? It's the word is going to define itself as something like some asshole creeping around in the shadows that probably wants to get me. Yeah, some scary ass dude, some scary ass giant creeping around in the dark shadows, trying to get me, trying to get my lunch, or trying to disturb my peace, trying to steal my fire. And so the word monster, words and names. I didn't realize I said word. The name monster. Yeah, I believe, or I believe. It's funny that I say I believe. It's more like there's this idea I stumble upon that words are lesser names, or something like words are secondary names. So the word or name monster, right? It is defined by the perception that it is defined by the perception the person who grants it a name has of it, right? So, is it possible to not have a name? I don't think it's possible to not have a name. Even if you were to call the thing creeping around in the woods, that thing, right? You don't have to call it a monster, right? You just have to call it a thing. It's like whatever. It's not. I don't think it's possible to not have a name. Say like for children, say like there's a child in the basket floating down the river, right? An abandoned child. What is the name of this child? This child's name, well, no one knows the child's name. It's like you either give the child a name or the child remains nameless. I think another okay, so it seems to me, look at that child who is floating down the river stream in the basket. It is possible that child has no name if no one comes to encounter the child to grant it with a name. It's like, so names only matter. A name only matters if there is someone, if there is another observer who inquires about something, and in their attempt to understand it, they throw words at it. They throw words at it. Like, what is this? What is this thing floating down the river in the basket? It's wailing and crying. It's red-faced, and it's puny. Its hands are reaching out, and it's floating down the stream. It's probably gonna fall down the waterfall. Yeah, it's like, whether you decide to take the baby out of the floating river stream, or you let it go down the waterfall. Like at some point in time, with your interaction of that thing, you're going to look at it, you're going to think about it, and you're going to wonder, what is that thing? Well, there you go. The baby has a name. That thing, right? It's like it's names. Oh, yes. Now, on the idea of greater and lesser names, imagine. Oh, geez, what do I think of these terrible examples? Imagine you live. Imagine you're in Nazi Germany, right? You're in a concentration camp. They strip you of your clothing, everything you own, right? They take out your gold teeth, all your jewelry, everything, right? You're bare naked in the cold. You're starving. You've been reduced to an animal, and they give you a black and white outfit, all striped up, and then on that outfit there's a number. There's a set of numbers. You no longer have a name, or at least you can no longer be identified with the name that you were born with. But for that number, which is bound on the outfit that they've given you now, so that is your name now. Your name is a set of numbers, right? It's to this is okay. This is where it comes from. The idea, with the power of names. It's like, say your name was something recognizably great, something like Alexander. Alexander is a great name, right? Considering its historical, considering the last great guy that wore that name, Alexander. Alexander is a great name. Say your name was once Alexander, and now you're 62345 or something, right? 6237. Something numerically ridiculous, right? So like now that is your now that is your name, right? And how do you feel about that name now? Or maybe your name was Theon once. Maybe once your name was Theon, and you were an outgoing guy. You went on raids. You cut off dudes' heads. You shot people up with arrows. You went to war. You went to whorehouses. You had all the women. You had money, right? You could buy whatever you wanted. You're a boisterous guy. You were an ambitious guy. And then one day something terrible happens. You're kidnapped. They throw you in a dungeon. They trick you. They cut off your manhood. They reduce you to your lowest state, and then they strip you of your name, and now your name is Reek. Your name is Reek now. You're no longer Theon Greyjoy, right? Of the great house of the Iron Islands. Now your name is Theon Greyjoy. Now your name is Reek. Now your name is Reek. How do you feel about that name now? How do you feel about that name? How do you feel about that name? Right? So the power of names. It's a funny. It's a ridiculous thing. It's like where do names derive their power? You could say power is a social construct. Is it? Who even says that? I'm not quite sure. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that. Although a lot of social constructs are things imbued with power, right? A social construct. Social constructs are something that people create to contain, in order to contain chaos and transform a society into a habitable order. And so it's like the power of names can. It's like a. I don't think it's. Is it intentional? Sometimes it's intentional, and maybe other times not. Right? And yeah, it's like names have an intrinsic power. It's like whether you like it or not, this name is going to have power. Like say your name is something like America, right? And also, I suppose, like the power of names, the power of names, of course, we decide how much power a thing has, and a thing like a name. We are the ones that decide. With the example of the caveman and the monster in the forest, right? It's like what does monster mean? Is it something, gigantic and scary, and life-threatening, or is it something, I can stomp on with my feet, and tyrannize with my fire, right? Like, what does that mean? So names have power, and names that power is dictated by the people who perceive and name things, right? Here's a good example: the N-word. Yeah, the N-word is a good example, right? Like, it started off as a derogatory term. It still is, but then it was there was like a lesser version of that. A lesser version of that. Although, like, of course, like, the irony is that, the N-word what is the root of the N word? Negro, right? It's like a Hispanic word to my understanding, right? Hispanic word. They, some guy, some plantation owner, he put a twist on it. Maybe like maybe that's how they talked back then. They put a twist on it, and then it became a derogatory thing, like a racist thing, and then the people who the racism, the people on the receiving end of the racism over time, they sort of, they sort of. It's like, yeah, okay, all right, okay, well, we understand what you're trying to say here. We understand, right? And then they took it and they made something else out of it. So like now it's like, you say the word in all its inclinations, right? In all its gradations. It's like, what are you saying? Are you saying the color black? Or are you trying to impose racial superiority, or are you trying to call me, a brother of yours? Are you trying to be homely with me? Right? So it's all very funny. It's like, well, not funny. Well, sure, say you could say it's funny, but it's amusing and fascinating like that. It's amusing and fascinating like that. I had some questions written down here. So what happens when you don't have a name? Well, no, you can't not have a name as long as you have a system of language and a language that means things. Right? Language is names and words, right? As long as you have a system of verbal communication, you can't not have names. Like, even if you don't have a good name, even if you have a derogatory name, or Jane Doe, John Doe, it's like, yeah, that's your name, John Doe, right? It's like, yeah, sure, who cares if John Doe is the name of a missing person or a corpse? It's like, yeah, that's your name. Sure, you have a common name. It's not a very special name, but at one point it was. At one point it was, and but it's a name nonetheless. Names. What is the importance of names? Names. The importance of names. To acknowledge existence of things. To acknowledge the existence of things, right? It's like it's something. Here's an important thing about names and, by extension, words. It's like something is, well, it goes back to the example of the monster in the dark. It's like say like something is happening. Oh yeah, like say something is happening, something's going on, but no one's talking about it, right? I think that is something else that is distinctly human, that separates us from lesser animals, right? It's like something can be happening and no one can be acknowledging it, right? Maybe because either they're not paying attention, or actually, in most cases, if something is noticeably happening, most likely people are ignoring it, for the good or worse that that decision may bring about, right? So something can be happening and no one is acknowledging it, but maybe someone gets fed up and they do decide to say something, right? And then suddenly that thing which was seemingly invisible, starts happening. Like it is a name is given onto it, and suddenly it is visible. Suddenly it is a visible thing, right? It's like I knew the left part of my body. The left part of my body was numb and dead, right? But my brain was the left side of my body, which is partially destroyed, the part of my brain which would acknowledge that was numbed to the degree that if you pointed it out to me, I I would not have cared, or I would have forgotten it the moment that you mentioned it. But maybe say you pour some cold water on that part of my brain, right? And suddenly I wake up and I have somewhat of a fully functioning brain than I did a few moments ago. Suddenly I notice the numb and partially dead left part of my body, and then I start weeping. I'm crying, like, what the hell happened to me? I remember what happened to me. Why am I half dead? This is all very terrible, right? What the hell is this? How could I have lived all this time, all these several minutes, without realizing what was wrong with me? Right? It's a very sad situation. It's all very sad, right? And until the cooling wears off, and then I revert back to that state, and then I just keep going on. I don't acknowledge. I don't acknowledge it anymore. I just keep going on, dragging my leg and dragging my hand, and dragging my left leg and hand, all limp, but I'm not really thinking about it, right? It's like names pronounce the existence of things. It's like a thing may exist, but you don't have to acknowledge it. But once you acknowledge it, now it really exists. Now it really exists. Now it's really there. Now it's really there. And that means now you have to confront it in some way. You have to confront it in some way. You have to. Now what do I do with this thing which I've acknowledged exists now? Which I've decided to give power to. It's like whether you like it or not, by naming a thing, you give it power. To whatever degree that power, of course, entails. Yes, this other thing I wanted. In any case, I've talked about it. Right, the offense of being called a lesser name, like, hey, you, come here. Hey, you, right? It's like, hey, why are you calling me that? Hey, I have a name, by the way. I have a name. My name is great. My name is Theodore, right? Like the president. My name is America, and that is something nationalistic, right? Because I'm an American, red stripes, white stars, red and blue stripes, red, blue, white. Like, okay, I'm having a brain malfunction here. How does the American flag look like? Red, blue, and white stripes, right? Red, blue flag, red, blue, white flag. No, the blue is in the box with the stars. Yeah, red and white. Red-blooded American. My name is America, right? Which is also funny. Like, depending on the political spectrum that you're on. It's like, if you're the kind of person that fancies to burn the flag, you're not going to be so happy about your name being America. Yeah, but in any case, such is the power of names. Yes, that's why names are sore. Names are so important, and I'm particularly proud of my name. Actually, it's a great name. Well, I'm not going to talk about it, but just so you know, my name is great. My name is great. So I realize it's like if you're called something, maybe something typical, something anyone can recognize. Say, with the example of Alexander, but I suppose not everyone knows their history. Sure, like even the name Napoleon, right? Maybe people may know Napoleon more than they know Alexander, and say that you look up you look up to the guy Napoleon, right? Some people look up to Napoleon, and you can see why. It's like, yeah, yeah, of course, right? And people look up to Napoleon, so you may, say your name is Napoleon. You and the people who know that name will recognize, like, wow, this is a powerful name, right? This is a powerful name. Although, it goes back again. It's like, some names can be controversial, and it's like, either people think your name is great, or people think your name is contemptible, right? I mean, like, you certainly, in any case, just because your name is great doesn't make it a good name, right? Like, like, now we're all thinking of that example, right? Like that typical example, right? Yeah, he was a great man, but what mother or father, or sane father wants to name their child, that name, right? It's like, are you trying to curse me, right? So, yeah, I suppose that is what is the matter with names. Yes, that is the matter with names. So, names are something else. I was just about done, but then I remembered something else. An addendum. This is not much of anything, actually. This is an addition. Think about this. The Romans and the Egyptians, when they wanted to kill someone, they didn't just kill them, right, physically. If that person was great and their name was known by many, right? It's like, I want to overthrow my cousin, I want to overthrow my father, right? I want to overthrow some unfortunate relative, right? It's like, I kill them, I usurp their place, usurp, right? I take their place, and then I don't stop there. Now that they're dead, they have to be a little bit more dead, right? I break down their statues, I break down their temples, I demolish it, level it into the ground, run my chariot over it, right? I pour salt on their settlements, right? What the Romans did to the Carthaginians, they salted their place, they salted their land so that no crops may grow there. They absolutely demolished them, right? They decimated them, they leveled all their land, right? It's like, that's what, and it's like, it's not enough to kill someone. To really make sure that they're dead, you must kill them also as a concept and an idea, which is difficult to do. But I think a name is easier to kill than other. Well, it depends on the name. Maybe you could say it depends on the name, or perhaps also it depends on the time period. But to destroy a man, you must kill also the idea of the man, or at least have them be forgotten as they once were, right? No one else should learn about them. This person never existed. I scratched out their name off of the temples and off of the buildings. I demolished their statues. I burnt all the history of them in the great libraries. I took them out, right? I snuffed them out immediately. Physically, conceptually, this person never existed. So that's what those guys did, right? It's like, they were very creative individuals. Maybe I wouldn't say creative, but maybe something like they were very ambitious, conscientious individuals, right? To forget one's name, to have one's name be forgotten, because because they realized this is not a nuanced idea, right? For people in high places, it's like they realize this very easily. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to make a name for myself. Oh, this guy's name is greater than mine's. So maybe I don't like that very much. Maybe I don't like that very much. Yeah. So that's another fascinating thing that I thought to add. And so it is. So it is that history does not remember blood. It remembers names.